Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to move to our final session, which is about taking messages from the 4th Agriculture and Rural Development Day to Rio+20 and beyond. I've got 3 people who should be up front here. We're going to have Tutwiler, who is the Deputy Director General at FAO, who's going to give us a synthesis of everything we've seen, heard, and done today. We're going to have responses from a global perspective, and that's going to be done by Carl Hausmann, who represents the consortium, the CGIAR consortium. And then we're going to have responses bottom-up, none other by Embrapa, who are going to respond to what they've seen, what they've heard, and what it is that we are taking forward. Without further ado, I want to pass on to Anne for the synthesis report. Over to you, Anne.
All right, thank you, Lindiwe. And first, before I start attempting to summarize what we've all heard today, let me just thank the organizers of this event for a very stimulating day. The Ag and Rural Development Days are developing quite a legacy, and I think it's one of the best attended sessions that people have told me about here, and I think it's because this event has such a good track record for high-quality discussions. So my great-grandfather, who was a minister, always used to say the best speeches tell you what you're going to hear, tell you what you're hearing, and then tell you what you heard. So I think it's also true for conferences. So I'm here to deliver the third part of telling you what you heard. So, second slide. Oh, okay. Green button, great. The other green button. Okay, thank you. So, first of all, just let me give a brief overview of the context of the discussions we've had today, where we've talked about a very complex set of interconnected issues, where agriculture is both a challenge, but also can be a solution. First of all, we know that agriculture is the single largest employer in the world, providing livelihoods and jobs for about 40% of today's global population, and obviously much higher than that in the developing world. We know that rising food prices threaten the nutritional security of the 1.4 billion people living in poverty, who spend as much as 70% of their income on food. And we also saw in 2008 how quickly rising food prices can reverse the progress, the hard-won progress against poverty in just a few short months. So, very important issue. Climate change. Unabated climate change could cost the world at least 5% of its GDP each year and seriously undermine the ability of small-scale and, I would say, large-scale farmers to provide food for their families, for national and global markets. At the same time, we know that agriculture and agriculture-related activities are a source of about 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions, and that includes the impact of deforestation. We also know that as the agriculture sector responds to the need for rising food production, these greenhouse gas emissions are projected to rise by about 30 to 40% above the levels we have now. And finally, we know that to feed the projected population by 2050 will require about 60 to 70% more food, total increase in food production, and a 50% rise in investments in the food, ag, and rural development sector. But I would also say that according to FAO projections, unless significant changes are made in how we grow the food and where we grow the food and by whom, we could still end up with 300 million people hungry, even if we are able to satisfy global demand for food in 2050. And I think that's an important context for the conversations we've had today. So I'm not going to attempt to summarize what each individual said, but I just want to pull out a few remarks that struck me as I was listening this morning. First of all was the concept of consensus, and Mary just used the word convergence across the broad areas of agriculture, fisheries, and forestry. I think a lot of times our sector tends to give mixed messages to policymakers about what's important and what the direction we need to go is. And policymakers, when they get mixed messages, tend to not move forward. And so to be able to generate consensus, to develop consensus, and to promote that, I think is a very important role for this conference and maybe one of the important outcomes in Rio for the set of issues we are most focused on. We also heard that there is a very strong commitment, in fact throughout the day we heard a very strong commitment from the government of Brazil to be working in this area of agriculture research, innovation, to support developing countries. We also heard of the importance of public-private partnerships, particularly in the arena of research, to stimulate innovation and nitrogen use efficiency, to build more robust communication infrastructures, and to get ahead of the issues of land grabbing. And I think one of the major messages, if I could say, of the whole conference for me was Rachel Kite's suggestion that this should be the last Ag and Rural Development Day and that we should be talking in future about landscape days. Another point that came out again many times throughout the day is the need to move out of the silos of environment, agriculture, women's issues, etc. And these are not just institutional silos. They are also mindset silos that we need to break. You know, people define themselves as foresters or gender experts, but we need to understand that we are all part of a broader mosaic of solutions. So how can the sector rise to the challenges that have been put before it? One of the key issues that was discussed was the need for leadership and the reflection that we don't have sort of global leaders at the moment in this area. And I think we're moving in, we are in an environment, we're moving into an environment where we will have more dispersed leadership. We cannot just look to the elders or countries or strong individuals to set the direction. We are going to have to build the networks and build the leadership from behind and from alongside. And I think, again, we heard Mary just now talking about the importance of youth playing a strong role in that leadership. We also heard, related to youth, the need to make agriculture an interesting profession. And it does have a unique quality of being able to help young people match the idealism that they come into the job market with an ability to actually earn a living, which is not always possible to get both of those things. I think I would give the award to the two most quotable comments to Daiborn Chibonga, who told us that the hand hoe is an instrument of mass urbanization. And I think this is really important for us to understand that unless we are able to bring innovation and productivity and profitability to the farm sector, we are going to have even more challenges from urbanization than the ones we are seeing today. And the quote that the future belongs to the organized, and that we need to really mobilize farmers, mobilize young people, mobilize women to work together, both to receive training, but also to be able to provide advisory services. Another important point that emerged today is the point that Kanayo Nwanzi makes, and he makes it over and over again, and I think it cannot be stated often enough, and that is farming is a profession. And we need to be thinking about it as a profession and working in it as a profession, not as an act of charity. The other important point that came out several times today is the need to demonstrate impact or to demonstrate outcomes. This is ever more important as we are all looking to invest very limited sums of government money and donor money, that we need to demonstrate that there is actual impact of the work that we're doing. However, this is extremely difficult in the area of research when your impacts may be 20, 30, 40 years down the road. But no, we can't duck from that challenge because the people who are paying for this are not going to let us duck it. The last issue that came out several times and related back to the landscape approach is the importance of forests in the conversation about agriculture. And this is a conversation we have within FAO all the time. Forestry is one of our mandated areas, but often is not as integrated as we all would like it into how we are addressing our food security challenges. So turning now to the learning events. So these learning events were structured around the 7 policy recommendations for food security that came out of the Scientific Commission on Sustainable Ag and Climate Change. And there were 13 side events here, learning events, throughout the late morning. So I think there are a couple of things, again, emerged, not trying to summarize each individual event separately. One was the importance of combining the policy making and institutional and human development with the science investments. And this was particularly brought out by our colleagues from Brazil in their model with Embrapa, but also, again, Mary talked about this in her remarks that we just heard. One of the other important comments that was made was the need to bring farmers and scientists into the center of policy making. Scientists often like to view themselves as sort of above and outside of policy making, but there really is a need for scientists to become much more deeply involved in the decision making around these investments. So there was significant attention given in the learning events to how sustainable intensification can be put in place. So one of the issues is attempting to clarify when and where land sharing approaches and land sparing approaches can result in the best outcomes. Sometimes these are seen as either-or solutions, but we need to be thinking about tailoring them to the exact situation. There was also an important discussion, I think, about improving livelihoods and reducing greenhouse gas emissions through new livestock feeding practices and improved forage. And I would say this to me is also part of the conversation of sustainable consumption. Livestock consume a lot of our natural resources. If we can make that sector more efficient, we can go a long way to solving a number of the problems and challenges that we're seeing on water and on land use. There was also a conversation at different levels about the importance of better nutrient management systems that can improve crop production but also minimize nutrient use and reduce pollution. So in others of the discussions, the learning events, the important issue of the dual challenge of nutrition that we are facing now, undernutrition and some would say overnutrition or overconsumption, are really pointing the way to a shift towards healthy and more sustainable eating habits. And an important aspect of this is improving access to information and allowing consumers to have meaningful choices, both important. We also had an event on gender, which I was part of, and a very rich discussion, but I think what I would take away from that conversation is the need, as we are going through all of these issues we're talking about, to be really thoughtful before we start a research project, before we start an innovation system, to be aware of the impacts that it will have on gender and to make sure that, that these systems are benefiting women equally to men, or maybe even benefiting them a little more than men for the meantime. Important conversation about food losses and food waste. This has been an issue that has been too long ignored in our debates around agriculture and food security. FAO last year produced a report that said about 30% of food is lost both in rich countries and in poor countries. And this is not an easy win, but it certainly is something we know what the interventions are. They're involving infrastructure, supply chain coordination, and better consumer behavior. And last but not least, it's about a more robust knowledge system. The importance of the role of rural advisory services in bridging research, field-level innovation, and markets is hopefully going to be one of the legacies of this event and also of Rio. And again, I want to mention the importance of having a set of measurements that enables us not only to know whether we're making progress, but allows policymakers and decision makers to look at multiple dimensions of a problem. So to look at both the social sustainability, the environmental sustainability, and the economic sustainability, not just in the current moment, but also over time. And this is something that is, I think, a real need and a real area for policy research. So I think together these learning events have showcased the depth and breadth of the progress that people in this room have made towards understanding sustainability and demonstrating that it's possible to achieve a more sustainable food and ag system. So in the last session of the afternoon was focused on science and technology, which is the core business, after all, of the CGIAR system. And we have the great advantage of being in Brazil, which made a very significant commitment to science and technology for tropical agriculture and soil fertility, and then lined up the institutions, the policy, entrepreneurship, and marketing networks that were needed to take that science up and out into use. The other point that we heard in this afternoon was that social issues, institutional issues, political issues can't be separated from the technical issues. They are one and the same. And while you don't always find that knowledge in the same head, we need to bring it together so that we can make sure that the science we are developing actually can be utilized out in the community we're trying to benefit. We also talked about the importance of farmer-led research, and I think particularly women farmer-led research. One of the important findings of the State of Food and Agriculture report that FAO did last year was that women's innovation and technology needs are often quite different from men's. And so we need to think about that as we're moving into designing solutions. So, what do we need to do for a more food secure future? The first thing is, and I'm not necessarily following what's on the slide, but the first thing is, I think, this integration of farming, livestock, fisheries, forestry, energy, water, essentially systems thinking. This is very hard for most people to do, but I don't see a way that we can solve the complexity of the challenges we're facing without bringing a systems approach to our work. And this will require partnerships, and I would say even more than partnerships, mutual understanding between these sectors, and partnerships between the ministries who often don't talk to each other in rich or developing countries. We also need to continue to support research and rural advisory services. This is something, as was pointed out, that has been left to wither for the last 15, 20 years. But now that we're back, and this is a focus of global attention, we really need to build this portfolio of sustainable technologies and sustainable methods to link the research and the on-the-ground innovation. And to create a real momentum for accountability, we need to promote a sustainable development goal for sustainable food systems. This is very important. It goes beyond the important goals on food security and nutrition that we currently have to really talk about what's the system that sustains both the food production and the environment. So now is the time for policymakers here in Rio to commit to making progress on the integration of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, supported by robust knowledge generation and extension services, and launch progress towards a sustainable development goal. So this is the legacy of this fourth annual Ag and Rural Development Day. I think each of us has a responsibility to carry the messages that we've heard from this meeting today and from the other work that we are all doing into our own organizations, but also into the negotiations that are continue to go on. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here with all of you today. I think we've had a great session today, and I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers and all of the people who have put in a lot of work to make today be as successful as it was. I'm here with you this afternoon representing the board of the Consortium of CGIAR centers. As you've heard, we've reformed our system. We have a harmonized portfolio of different research projects, CRPs as we call them, that treat the whole landscape, treat the whole system of development of ag, forestry, and fisheries. They do this in an integrated way with some useful and necessary overlap. And I think we have been rewarded by strong vote of support from the funders in continuing to grow the funding necessary to do this work. One of my roles as a board member is to make sure we're listening outside the system to other partners in the value chain, other members of civil society, to make sure we are adapted to what the whole society is looking for. We will absolutely continue to do that as we go forward, and as the board, I can assure you that we will continue to listen to all of you, our partners and members of civil society, to continue to adapt. Another role as a board member that I don't know whether I have or I appropriate, but is to share reflections with all of you, the broader community, to make sure we are all focused on the challenges at hand. So I'd like to have a short presentation to more or less conclude the day. So we are almost there for those of you who might be getting a little bit tired at the end of a hard day. But I'd like to talk about 4 challenges that I'd just like to, from an attendee at this session, to make sure we all focus on just a little bit more as we go forward. When I thought about what my response from today's session would be, I started off by focusing on 2 words that Rachel Kite used in her opening presentation. We need to work hard, but we need to go with speed and bring things to scale. How do we go with speed and bring things to scale? So 4 items, and this will not take long. The first one is 2012. The UN has designated this as the year of the international cooperative. I don't think we've heard anything about that today, and I just wanted to reinforce that. I believe we all have a role to support cooperative movements. Why? Because I think small shareholders need a way to fit into and benefit from the market environment in which we all work. As important as research is to prime the pump, finally they have to fit into a market environment. And it's critical, in my opinion, to do this through farmer co-ops. Second item that I'd like to draw your attention to is that we all need to inform national national decisions on investment in infrastructure. Doubling food production, or whatever quantity we are talking about, is critical that we increase the infrastructure that we have. I think one of the facts that we probably all know, but we didn't see a chart today, while population is growing, rural population not only is shrinking in percentage terms, it's actually shrinking in absolute terms. So cities are growing at a multiple of speeds to the total population, and this requires infrastructure to connect the rural production areas to the urban demand areas. How do we do this? Some areas the private sector can do some of it, but mostly roads and other type of critical infrastructure to link our production areas to the markets is absolutely necessary, and we have to ring the bell to bring attention to this. My third point that I want to talk to you about is we all need to pay attention to inform the public discussion around national policies. Yes, in some degree, to regulate and even control the private sector. But more importantly, we need to grow the private sector to meet the challenges of tomorrow. It is not our role to constrain the private sector, but make sure it is in a position to grow. At the same time, understanding that we must respect the landscape's ability to support the ecological services so that we can continue going forward. So, in my opinion, the national policies that will make all of this possible are absolutely critical. The fourth point and last one I'd like to bring to your attention is maybe our biggest challenge, and it is the most obvious, but let me say it anyway. We need to leave this session with all that we have learned, and we need to adapt and act. This is not a session just to listen and take notes. It is we need to understand where we need to adapt, and we need to react. The world that we are living in is ever-changing and very dynamic. And so if I can leave you with just 2 words out of all of these 4 when I sit down, it is adapt and react. Thank you very much.
So I am the last one, so it's really a difficult task. But first of all, I would like to thank you very much, the CG people and everything that organized the wonderful day that we have here. And I would like to make some points. The first thing is the landscape approach. I think is a very interesting approach, but I think we should be very careful to not lose the focus. That's the first message that I would like to make. The other message that I think was very interesting, and it seems that we have a wave of bringing together environment and agriculture, and I think we should surf in this wave. Everybody should go in the same direction. The other thing that was clear too is that not only the CGIAR is make big changes in adapting itself to those challenges that we have, and I think all the national programs should make the same exercise. And we, as Embrapa, people have said good things about Embrapa, but we always are thinking how we can do better and how we can adapt ourselves to the future. The other one that I mentioned, and I would like to stress this, is the importance of enhancing the partnership South-South-North. I think we should make more effort in trying to establish new channels of that partnership. We are exercising it, but I think the World Bank and the other multilateral organisms, they should pay attention to that. So the other thing that was mentioned, there was a question actually in the end here, and for example, when someone asked about the Cerrado model, and there isn't one Cerrado model. There is many Cerrado models. There is many models in Brazil. And Brazil doesn't want to export any model to anywhere. I think the thing that we are trying to do is just showing people how our experience was, how it was developed, and I'm sure people, each country and each place in the world, we're going to have to develop their own model, because, and we can help that, but no model is applicable to any place. And I think that's another important point. And lastly is important that we, as scientists, make the common people and public in general realize how important science and technology is key for the development of the agriculture or whatever sector they want to do it. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that it's been a full day, and thank you for staying along and being on standby to take the messages forward. We all have the responsibility to make it happen, and the challenge is how do we take the messages from here to the outside world, but most important, cross the road to Rio+20. This has been an excellent day, and I think we've made history. We've made history because this journey is 4 years old. We started in 2009 in Copenhagen, where we thought, let's just tell the world that agriculture produces food, and that agriculture depends and needs a good climate. So we did stay focused. We continued our journey to Mexico. We had just over 300 people, and we continued and said, agriculture produces food. Everybody needs food. We were half heard. Victory we celebrated in Durban last year, when for the first time people could not just spell the word agriculture, but they were confident enough to put it in the text. That was a milestone, an achievement, when adults can pronounce the word agriculture with comfort. What then is the achievement for today? I believe we've made headway. We've made headway because for the first time, Agriculture and Rural Development Day has engaged close to 1,000 participants, 500 face-to-face and more than 500 virtually. That's an achievement, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, we've made an achievement because we've committed to an integrated approach. We've committed to ensuring that we achieve sustainable food systems. We've also committed to ensuring that knowledge drives the change process. Now, the elephant in the room. Is it ARDD 5 or Landscape 1? This is what I have. I've been trying to play around with the words, and thanks to Tutwiler, I came up with WEFA Day. It's water, it's energy, it's fish, it's forest, it's agriculture. Thank you very much for a wonderful day.
Please join me in thanking our closing speakers and our chair. Thank you very much. I'd also like to ask you to join me in thanking our hosts for today, Embrapa and CGIAR, and the sponsors and co-organizers and media partners. Thank you very much for making it happen. I do have one final announcement. For those of you who have been part of the previous 3 Agriculture Raw Development Days, do know that there's a ticket system for the cocktail reception with which we'd like to welcome you outside. There are 2 tickets tonight. The first ticket is your headset, please, if you could make sure that you hand it in on the way out or leave it on your chair. The second ticket you'll find in your event guide, and it's entitled the feedback form, and we'd love your views, please. Please take a few moments to write down some comments, to hand it in to our helpers at the information desk or at the back, but we really do value and welcome your feedback. Thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you very much.